Welcome to The Last 50 Feet, the podcast about what happens when autonomous vehicles actually arrive at the curb. Every week, we get into what is moving in autonomous commerce, what's stalling, and who's building what next. No fluff, all signal, and we keep it brief. That's our thing. Let's get into it. Turn the volume up, guys. Volume. It's probably so loud for them, and it's just like kind of for us. So we needed the volume up one.
We needed more volume, is what you're saying?
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, failure on my part, but that's a good sample. Exactly, we didn't think it through.
It was a live test.
Good.
We're adding a new entertainment feature on the pod starting this week. It was a bit rough right there, but you get the picture.
Did you hear it at all, or just nothing?
Just like a little bit. I knew it was there, so I had banged with you, but it wasn't. It was minor.
Yeah,
minor to what it could be. But
we'll figure out the audio. I mean, the video is one thing. The audio is a completely different thing.
Yeah, it's okay. Next time.
Damn,
we have a lot of work to do. Welcome to The Last 50 Feet, Patriotic Week. As you can see here, we are joined today by Alex Roy, Autonomicast. Alex, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Obviously, we have our normal cast of characters. Otherwise, producer Kyle and both CEO Ben wearing their patriotic gear today. You guys look fantastic. And I apologize for not getting the memo, possibly because there wasn't one sent out.
Did you watch the World Cup last night? Were you not inspired?
I was extremely inspired.
Okay, well, it looks like not.
Yeah.
Did we have to win 3-0?
Yes.
What was the?
That would have been helpful.
What was the result that would have made you excited about living in this country today?
Possibly would have tipped me over the edge. But nonetheless, we are here, and you guys look fantastic.
Thank you.
You know, I flew from Washington back to Arizona last night and passed through Chicago airport, and there must have been like 30 or 40 World Cup fans, Europeans, marching through the airport, and anyone who made eye contact, they were so excited to see that Americans loved World Cup too. I'd never seen. But did you follow the story of Freddie, the German fan who went around the country?
I did, yeah. Weird story.
Do you think he was an op? Because yesterday he canceled his Twitter account and he went from like 5,000 people to like 700,000 people. So, and then he disappeared. Was that an op or a real guy?
That's what. Yeah, I have no idea. I could never. So I did a little research into this because I'd never heard of this guy. Like, who is this guy? What's the deal? How does he have so many followers? And then I went through his, posts of the past few years. He's a real quote unquote influencer or something. I don't get what the target was for his influencing, but he was some kind of German influencer on X largely, and his posts were prolific. So he's not a new figure, but it didn't have a purpose. And then he blew up. Yeah, like he was all over my feed for a good week and a half. And then, as you said, something happened, and now he's gone.
Could be an op.
I mean, it does feel as that if he was American or from the Valley and he had scaled his audience that much that quickly, he would have instantly gotten like CA or IMG to represent him and join the creator economy. But no, because he's a European soccer fan, maybe he's just went home and didn't want the attention, and that would be a shame for Freddie.
Could have been an AC issue as well.
Thank you for tying this in. Yeah. I was hoping we would cover AC.
A D-cell issue. Anyway, the show's yours. What are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about autonomous vehicles here on this podcast, and we're excited to have you. I mean, some background for our audience. Alex was essentially the first person that introduced me into the world of autonomy. I got connected to Alex via LinkedIn, I think, in December of 2024. So a couple months after coming up with the idea for Autolane and starting to work on it. But as some of the listeners in our audience may know, I don't have a background in automotive nor autonomy. And so building this business in 2024 with essentially zero network or relationships in the automotive space was hard. And that was certainly, I think, one of the biggest early challenges we faced was how do we start building those relationships with companies like a Waymo or a Tesla or a Ford, or how do we understand our role in all of this and build the bridges that are going to help us construct the platform that we have today. So Alex was kind enough to kind of take me under his wing in the early days, and you know, I was able to meet so many influential figures in autonomy, largely through your amazing CES Autonocast party that you host each year. But broadly speaking, you helped, you know, tie me into the places where I could learn and ask some questions and meet some people. So forever thankful for that contribution, and having you as an official Autolane advisor has been awesome. So that's kind of our
Thank you. No, thank you, Ben. Thank you. Because frankly, I meet so many founders. I get pitched so much, and most of it's trash. And if they're not charlatans, they're idiots. And so when I met you, I'm like, this guy is so close to the right idea. Like, I didn't know what the solution was, but with a few introductions and conversations, you figured it out. I'm so proud of you, and I am beyond excited. So, I mean, you can't. Like, I wish I could do a game show where I just a reality show where I just walk through these with the wretched, stupid pitches I get. So you were a winner out of the gate just for persistence, creativity. So
we might be charlatans here, but we're not idiots. I don't think so. That's good. We got half the equation solved.
No, you asked all the right questions at the time, and like I felt bad. You know, years ago, I was in I was in New York. It was like 3-4 years ago, and I got picked up by an Uber driver who had a black Tesla Model 3. So it was probably a 2021 Model 3. And every surface, like anywhere there was any like a window switch or the door open release, anything, he had, like, I guess he had bought like a very nice printer to print labels. So the exterior doors all had like labels like push here with thumb, and like everything was labeled. And I'm like, hey man, like I really like these labels. Like, do customers find these useful? He's like, not yet. I'm like, oh, and when will they find them useful? He's like, well, when my vehicle is driverless. This is 5 years ago. I'm like, I think you might be waiting a while. And he looks at me, he's like, what the fuck do you know about autonomous vehicles?
And that's a good segue into what do you know about autonomous vehicles?
You know, when I was 10 years ago, when Autonocast began, and I was agnostic on Tesla, but I knew I needed friction on the show to make it entertaining and scale the audience. So I'm like, let me find a rabid anti-Tesla guy. I'm like, oh, Ed Niedermeyer, this guy's pretty good. Let me find a woman who could be queen bee and the adult in the room. And I was mystically given Kirsten Korosek at a car show. And so that's how the show started. But you know, back then it was when I still called myself a journalist, it was very clear that 99% of journalists, people covering Tesla in the media, had never driven one. And also the most executives of car companies had never driven one. And if they had, it was for 5 minutes. And I'm not saying they were deliberately obtuse, but you know, it's a bad faith and it's intellectually dishonest to, you know, deliver a vociferous opinion on anything without having intimate knowledge of it. And sadly, that continues to this day around all Tesla discourse, Waymo less so. So in 2017 or 18, I leased a Tesla, and now I'm on my 5th Tesla. And I don't think anyone should be talking about it unless they own one or they're in business in some way 100%. In or around Tesla. Yeah, it's 100%. Absurd.
And so for those in our audience who don't know, Autonocast is widely regarded as the top podcast for autonomy. They've been doing it for how many years now?
10, did you say?
10 years.
10 wow. Strong years, all the way from the early days of AV, which a lot of us refer to as AV 1.0, through to today. And you know, that's just part of your autonomous vehicle experience, right? I mean, you worked for Argo in the early days and helped spearhead what is widely regarded as one of the first commercial autonomous ride-hail platforms. You were very involved in that, and would love to hear kind of your experience as an operator within the industry, because that, I know, shaped a lot of your thoughts on where we are today with the technology and kind of what gaps existed in the last couple of years. Because I think the AV 1.0 to 2.0 transition, which I believe to be cleanly demarcated by neural networks. And we don't want to get kind of too nerdy, I suppose, on this podcast, but there's certainly the reason that we built Autolane in 2024 was because the cursory research that I was able to do as an outsider to this industry showed me that there was a clear delineation between the autonomous vehicle activity that had happened prior to early 2024, and then everything else that was coming out in 2024 and beyond. And I was able to kind of come to the conclusion, and I suppose I haven't been proven right necessarily yet, but I think we will, which is that prior period of AV 1.0, which was LiDAR heavy, sensor heavy, pre-mapping, very expensive, hard to scale, and the technology and the unit economics were just not there for wide-scale commercial deployment. That absolutely was possible to be changed with the advent of neural networks and vision-only systems and other ways of approaching autonomy that should scale more cost effectively and hopefully lead to a different era of autonomy. So you've been researching and working in the industry and commenting on the industry all throughout that period. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that transition, if you agree or disagree.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I'm as a driving enthusiast and car fan, and I've got a bunch of old cars in my garage. I wish, I don't want to say that that'll go away, but autonomy was always inevitable. It's only a question like what timeline, like the Fight Club quote, like on a long enough timeline, the survival rate of everything is 0. But you could also say that the success rate of every technology is 100% on a long enough timeline. So all I care about is, will I see an exit while I'm an adult and I can spend the money, or will that somehow get inherited by my daughter, who will be wise enough to spend it in some future thing? I'm totally agnostic and don't really care. Neural networks versus rules based doesn't matter. In the same way that like the AC/DC, like the current wars of the 1880s around methods of electricity delivery don't matter, because ultimately whatever's the cheapest method to deliver autonomy or electricity reliably, cheaply, will find its way. You're undoubtedly correct that neural networks will be probably the precipitating technology that allows autonomy to scale cheaply, but it's not the end per user doesn't care. They just don't care. And frankly, I'm not sure the end user cares about safety either. Like, I really don't, because people are terrible judges of safety. And, people get afraid of sharks, but not mosquitoes. And my daughter gets in Waymos and thinks that they're already safe. And she thinks when I'm behind the wheel of my Tesla, that I'm an idiot because it's clearly driving itself. So that ship has sailed. And as far as I'm concerned, autonomy, that users will age into autonomy's perceived safety until eventually the perceived safety becomes this only safety that it matter, which is the product that sells. And so,
yeah, I agree with that. Tell us a little bit about your experience with Argo and what it was like in the early days of autonomy, putting cars out on the road and serving real commercial ride-hail operations in Miami, I think it was, where you were?
It was Miami. I can't take credit for Argo's successes. Maybe a little bit for when its failure. I came in year 3 of Argo, I think. And eventually, and my title was Director of Special Operations, which was a catch-all title the CEO asked me to make up, because I basically reported to him and went and was kind of his fixer. So I was the senior most executive living in Miami, which was the launch market. So I got to meet like all the local, elected officials and transportation people, and meet stakeholders and community leaders on the ground. So whenever there was a ride for a VIP or anyone that important, I got to host them, and I spent a lot of time testing the vehicles myself. And the CEO asked me, he's like, don't submit like an official report. I want you to just Slack me every day, your feedback on how the cars are doing. I'll compare that to what I get internally officially. So it was a wonderful role and I loved it. The thing that was illuminating at the time, and it's still, I don't think it's solved by anyone, is like, why is autonomy it's an orphan technology that's only now getting politicized? Traditionally, protected bike lanes were embraced by the left and the urbanist, voices in local cities, and trucks, driving, parking is like a right issue because people usually live in suburbs, and the nature of the demographic breakdown of where people live in this country, you can see that they vote their interests. So on the left, bikes and safety and green; on the right, trucks and highways. And autonomy is funny because its core message is safety. Like, oh, we're going to save all these lives. So logically, it should be embraced by the left and the urbanists, who are always talking about road safety, and yet they are rejecting it. They're not buying that. They're not even buying that even if autonomous vehicles were demonstrably safer, that they're good, because the size of a vehicle, the road geometry of an AV is the same size as a regular car. As far as they're concerned, a lot of the far left voices just don't want cars in cities at all. So that's ironic. And on the right, if you listen to the car enthusiast voices, friends of mine, they would say, we don't care if autonomy works perfectly because we want to, A, own the cars, and we want to drive them. And so it hasn't been embraced in the right either. And only in the last, I think, 6 to 12 months has clarity around the political position of autonomy as a concept become clear. And unfortunately, it has landed primarily as a left issue. They're opposed to it because of perceived job loss. And the AV industry has just frankly done a horrible job, if not no job, trying to mitigate those fears. Like zero job. And I could go on with this about hours, but I'll land on this. The closest analog to potential job loss to AVs is the elevator industry. And like when I was at Argo, one of my jobs was to help with messaging and write columns and do podcasts around the effect of AVs on society. And it's so clear, elevators had 100% human operators for 50 years after automated interfaces were available, because it was just installed user base. There was an elevator operator strike in New York City in 1946, which brought the city's economy to a standstill. And the next day, after the deal was cut between the union and the mayor, the next day, every commercial elevator operator in the city was calling Otis and the other companies saying, we need to upgrade our elevators to the automated interfaces, get rid of these operators. And despite that overwhelming demand, it still took 23 to 25 years to go from 100% elevator operator ubiquity to 1%. And during that time, this is the number. The total number of people employed by the elevator industry, I think it like 10x'd over that period. And so there was no job loss because of automation. There was job creation because the industry itself grew. I'm 100% convinced that's the case in autonomy. And frankly, I have never heard a counter argument, not one. They're just vibes.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely want to call you afterwards and talk about the multi-hour thoughts you have on this, because this is something that's front and center in my mind as well, as it pertains to Autolane scaling over the next few years. Of course, that's something that you could, very easily point to and say is an issue, and it is an issue. It's something that needs to be figured out, and there needs to be action taken. There needs to be smart policy. There needs to be all types of things from the leadership of the companies who are bringing these types of technologies to market. And I agree that the industry writ large has done a horrible job engaging with this idea. And for that reason, it's very easy to point at AV companies and say bad, and they try to hide after that. There's not really any, I just don't see any proactive engagement or work being done on that front. And that's a huge miss as far as I'm concerned. And it's something that Autolane is not going to repeat. We will be a active participant in the discussions and in the transition, and being forthright and proactive about all these issues, because people deserve an answer. If it's a concern that they have, or whether it's real or perceived, a concern by a large enough group of people absolutely deserves a conversation. It deserves honesty, genuine conversation. And so if the industry is not willing to do that, I think we should expect that the problems are going to get worse when it comes to this aspect of the technology being rolled out. So I am in full agreement with you on that. I mean, one thing we'd love to talk to you about is kind of your thoughts on autonomous delivery. Of course, that's let's call it an application of the underlying fundamental technology we've been talking about so far. We believe that Autolane is one of the first kind of application companies that is building we're not building the autonomous vehicles themselves. We're not building the underlying self-driving models. We're not developing any technology whatsoever that goes into the car. We are simply saying that if this technology is here and is about to scale as we believe it is, somebody and some company must begin to connect these autonomous vehicles to the places that they intend to go to, whether for ride-hail coordination or for delivery coordination. And I don't think that's a controversial nor even relatively novel idea. It's, to me, quite obvious that if these cars are going to start proliferating across our cities, we're going to need to not just have some type of modicum of control or observation or rules set for them to operate in the public, but also what about all of the private property? How are they going to interact with hotels and stadiums and airports and, you know, busy Costco parking lots? That is the interface and kind of the surface area that Autolane's focused on. So when it comes to autonomous delivery, that's a major use case for our platform. Of course, would love to hear your thoughts on kind of where you think the use cases for autonomous vehicles might extend to beyond ride hail, because that's all anyone talks about today is these cars doing ride hail, and that's great. That is the initial use case, but it's not the only one. Where else do you think this industry heads when it comes to use cases?
Well, I'll tell you why I like Autolane. You know, you guys probably too young to remember. In 1990, it was 97 to 99. There was a startup in New York City called Cosmo, Kozmo. Are you familiar with that story? Okay,
early user. I was like 13 using my mom's credit card.
Yeah. Joe Park, great guy. Went to NYU. I went to NYU with him, and and he came to me with this idea. I'm like, this is a great idea, man, but you should absolutely only deliver cigarettes, junk food, and pornography, because we're right by NYU, and like that's where we go to NYU. And I'm telling you, that's what you should deliver. And he's like, no, man, we're gonna deliver everything. I'm like, no, you just want to deliver this stuff, and you should only deliver your ODD. Should be like this big around the dorms, a few other places. And then when you scale, you should just make sure that your delivery zones are only college campuses. Start with the frat houses. Trust me. So anyway, he didn't listen to that, but he's still genius. And so they had their own inventory and bike delivery guys on 10th Street between 3rd and 4th Avenue. I was a big fan. And right as they were starting to raise money, and then one of the funds that they pitched, I guess the two guys running that fund, a New York-based VC firm, they loved the idea so much that they took the worst part of it and funded it and launched a competitor called Urban Fetch. Have you ever heard of Urban Fetch?
No.
So Urban Fetch was Cosmo's competitor created by a fund they pitched. And Urban Fetch did exactly what Cosmo was doing, but Urban Fetch went even crazier. They held inventory. They were delivering VCRs, DVD players, and TV sets on the back of bicycles. Like you could order a camcorder. Like this is like $1,500 camcorder in like 1999, 2000 on Urban Fetch. Wow. And it was crazy. Like that made no sense. So so Cosmo, they raised like $250 million back then, and then spent it on this massive expansion, and then ran out of money and died. But the idea was sound. And so what I like about Autolane, just full circle, is all right, so autonomy is inevitable. We know that people will pay for friction reductions. They like delivery. And we know they want to see their costs go down. And everybody in the chain wants to see their costs go down, especially the restaurants and vendors who are in an autonomous delivery platform. And so up until Autolane's arrival, the math was not mathing for somebody in that chain. And it was almost always the restaurants, the vendors, the supermarkets. And so we saw there's analogs to like Slice, which is like an app that just does pizza delivery, but Slice was direct to these restaurants and protecting their profit margins. So you take that, and Slice is cool. I like Slice on principle. And so Autolane takes like the Slice likability and desirability for vendors and just opens the iris to anything. So that right out of the gate makes sense to me. And then another conflating factor is everybody, like every vertical in business history, once everything's been optimized around for product, then every business tries to start entering every product category and do everything. And this is, if you look at Mercedes-Benz and BMW, they used to be Mercedes-Benz was safety and comfort, and BMW was ultimate driving machine. But now they each make 25 cars. They're in every product category. And you can't be awesome at everything and optimize for everything and win at everything. You can't.
Absolutely.
And so Tesla maybe can for other reasons, but everyone else cannot. And so Autolane showing up and solving one problem really well makes it a great candidate to scale or for acquisition. Whereas companies that are trying to do everything out of the gate and can't will probably never be successful. And so that's why I like the Autolane model, not just because I like you, Simon.
Yeah, we had this exact conversation this morning on our leadership meeting, which is like, you're completely correct on that front, and that is even though our platform at this point could even be considered niche. Why? Because there's not a lot of autonomous vehicles that can be used quite yet for it. So from that case, the supply side of it is holding it back, but that will be fixed relatively soon. The bigger question on the demand side is, given a constrained supply, where do we want to point this platform in particular? And so that, to your earlier comment, so that we're not trying to boil the ocean and do everything for anyone, we want to pick the particular businesses with particular end consumers who can benefit from the economics of autonomy today, which are thinner than what they will be as the years come on. Now, unit economics, as you also said, is kind of the crux of all of this. And unit economics today are not fantastic, widely because the cars that are going to be used for this platform in the early days, starting in Austin next week, are largely retrofitted cars. These are Model Ys, brand new Model Ys, but these are not autonomy optimized vehicles like a Cybercab, let's say. So if you were to look at the Cybercab efficiency, the size of that vehicle, the fact that it can get 204 miles per gallon equivalency, that is a vehicle that I think is absolutely the demonstration of what autonomy unit economics will begin to look like. And there will be, to your point, every OEM is going to be making something similar to a Cybercab as the years go on, and the cost will come down tremendously. And that's going to help, open up a lot of profit margin and savings that can be distributed against the platform. So the different participants, the end consumer, the business, Autolane, the AV supply itself, whoever owns these cars, everyone's going to win and get a slice of that savings. But there has to be enough savings there in aggregate to make this whole thing work. And to your point, that's why a lot of these platforms haven't been successful in the past, is there's just not enough meat on the bone to go around to satisfy all the participants. But I think there will be, as the years go on in particular. So that's absolutely kind of front and center for us on a leadership team, is thinking through, well, given we have a limited supply, where could this platform and this limited supply of vehicles create the greatest economic value? That's where we should point that the initial supply at. And then from there, we can go down to the things that have less meat on the bone, like restaurant delivery. There's definitely some margin that can be saved there by converting to autonomy, but it's not as much as other types of use cases that are doing last mile delivery. For example, retail pays a lot more for last mile delivery. Customers pay a lot more for it versus like a Chinese food order, where you're more price sensitive, time sensitive and price sensitive. But so we really need to hone in on exactly what you've stated, which is like looking at the broad delivery industry and saying, where would autonomy today make the biggest financial impact? And that's exactly where we need to point this thing in the early days, where we are supply constrained. So awesome segue for us to be able to kind of explain that, because I think the strategy is important.
I'm curious to know if you know, or if you can share between the rival supermarket chains. So I live in like Scottsdale, so I've got Sprouts, Whole Foods, Fry's, a local chain that's like 2 locations. It's like AJ's supermarket, which is the nicest of all of them by far. And I don't know if you consider Target and Walmart supermarkets. They're supermarkets. They're not nowhere near the other ones. And so I'd be curious to know who is ordering, like what's the average order size from each of these supermarkets for delivery and the time of day? Because I would order, I mean, when there's human people delivering groceries, and I've ordered groceries in small, large quantities at different times, but here it's so hot. So if the delivery arrives and I don't know it and it's just left on my doorstep, my Quest peanut butter cups melt, and then my daughter's unhappy. And so, whereas in an autonomous vehicle, like you're forced to go out and get it, which is actually a good thing in a hot climate. And so, especially in larger quantities where you have perishables. So do you got, like, to what extent do these supermarket chains that you've spoken to or are working with share that like granular data with you? Order size, order type, order delivery?
What we can say, because we're under NDA with most of the big ones, is in aggregate, there's an immense interest in the grocery vertical for temperature controlled, and that's what we've built with our smart locker. If you've seen that that we launched last month, we are building temperature controlled smart lockers so that not only can our AVs do temperature controlled delivery, but also they can batch 2 or 3 orders at a time. And that is very key. If you look through our kind of longer term horizon on the unit economics front, we need to move batching up from point to point, which is what we're going to start with, up to 3, ideally 3 orders per hour. So we'll be able to do about 2 orders per hour on a point to point delivery, but that's not as efficient, of course, which then ends up becoming a unit economics driver as batched. And so we will be doing batched temperature controlled delivery with our in-car smart locker that we developed. But yes, you are correct in the fact that there, even within a given grocer, there are specific cities or use cases or items in which autonomous delivery would do much better. And there are other scenarios in which maybe human driver economics are just fine for today. So yeah, that's kind of the fun part of where we're at as a business. And July 2026 is we're getting to ask these questions of these top retailers and grocers and QSRs and retail REITs, so that we can find out, how do we best fine tune our platform and our product so that we're solving pretty significant cost issues and financial issues in a way that provides value right out of the gate, as opposed to continuing to say, well, someday when the cost per mile comes down to 30 cents, like Elon said, then it's all going to make sense. It's like we can't be building a business based on hypotheticals that are obviously years away. So to your point, like asking those questions, getting the data from our candidate customers and partners allows us to then hone in on exactly where we want to deploy the platform. But one thing I was going to note that I forgot that you're in Scottsdale. We're launching Scottsdale Fashion Center, I believe next week.
Wait. A Fashion Square Mall, Scottsdale?
Fashion Square, Scottsdale Fashion Square.
And who's your partner? What are you delivering? Mason Rich?
So we're doing AV ride hail coordination at 2 Mason Rich properties in the Phoenix area. Actually, a few more than that. But yeah, we're working with the property owner just for AV ride hail at this point.
And then what's exciting? You got an intro?
Go ahead. I have an intro.
I was going to say what's exciting about that is that we AV ride hail coordination is essentially one of the use cases of our core product. And that's a use case that provides value today for major shopping center owners because it coordinates Waymos and creates these kind of pickup drop-off zones similar to what you would see at an airport for Uber Lyft. Mm-hmm. So we're able to kind of set up these zones for them that coordinate AV ride hail, which is great. But again, we see that the largest use case economically for the Autolane platform will be in autonomous delivery orchestration. And so a property that can leverage our technology for both use cases is even better. And so what we're always looking to do with our retail REIT partners is provide initial value with AV ride hail coordination with our system. And then when the time comes, we can flip on the second major use case of autonomous delivery. Now, why would that matter for a place like Scottsdale Fashion Center? Well, imagine a scenario. Thank you. Sorry.
Square.
Cam's done the deal. I'm just falling behind this guy, so got to get the words right here. Point is, when we can turn on the delivery use case at any retail shopping center that has multi-tenant, you can imagine without something like Autolane, you have a disaster on your hands when autonomous vehicles of all shapes, sizes, types, and OEMs start coming to the mall to pick up an order from a given tenant inside the mall. And every one of those tenants is striking their own strange technology deal with a different vendor. And then these cars are coming into the parking lot of the shopping center looking for their appropriate place to park so that they can interact with the tenant autonomously. It's a complete nightmare if you see it playing out the way we do. And so I think what's exciting is once we get our product installed and functioning for AV ride hailing at a given major center like that, then it has double use over time, where now it can also not only receive the autonomous vehicles for ride hail into one zone, it can also receive the autonomous vehicles for delivery into one zone, and it can be the overarching property-wide platform that allows tenants to tap into that and then use one existing system as opposed to a bunch of disparate solutions.
Who owns or manages Fashion Square Mall?
Macerich.
Okay. And what's the name of the other big like mall company? Like
Simon Property Group.
That's the Simon Property Group.
Yeah.
So when I was at Argo in Miami, one of the things I just started to do before the company shut down was approach the real estate developers, before or just after ground had been broken on commercial and residential properties, to try to negotiate like exclusive access to the building, because traffic and ingress egress to those high density structures in Wynwood and parts of Miami Beach was a real problem. And I was living in Brickell, which was the worst. And so that was, I was hoping, my wish at the time was that we would negotiate a deal whereby a lease in one of those buildings would come with some number of ride credits for passengers or delivery discounts, and that they would pass exclusively through the an Argo enabled platform. And then the company shut down. That was the end of it. So I'm thrilled to see you go down a parallel road. Because the end goal is the same. You want to control that. Like that's the money printer. So.
That's it, exactly. We're agnostic to the actual use case of what the AV is arriving to do, whether that's to drop off a passenger, pick up something, drop off an order, pick up a person. All those activities or transactions, if you want to look at it like that, we don't necessarily care what it's coming to do, but we do want to make sure that AV arrives properly, that it's dispatched correctly, that there's a system involved so that the property owner can see all of that, and that in the case of a shopping center, that multiple tenants can then utilize that infrastructure to do their own autonomous delivery with the various providers. So it's going to be exciting to get into Phoenix. It's our next city and state that we're expanding to.
It's also a new gig work position, which is instead of a person having to get on a bicycle or e-bike or car to deliver one or multiple things at a time, that person could remain at the shopping center and just cycle through the locations and deliver. Yeah. And so, and that person will probably need to be a little savvier, better dressed than the person in the supermarket parking lot. And so anyway, bridge.
Alex, where do you think you've had like a pretty truthful voice around where we are today, where we're going, and the gap that kind of exists in between? Where and when do you think you'll first be able to sit in the back seat of your Tesla while FSD is turned on and take a snooze while it takes you wherever it is that you want to go?
Here, Arizona. I'm running a 99.9% FSD all the time. And earlier this year we set the first New to LA cannonball record on FSD. That was 100% the whole way. And had the weather been better, I would have said the car I think we were the problem. Like if we had not been in that car, the car would have gotten there faster, because every navigational change I made actually made the ride worse. And so I think I'm pretty optimistic about it. I think in 24 months, I mean, I think he could probably do it now if Tesla would allow it. And we'll know because what Tesla's going to do is they're probably going to announce that driverless functionality is going to be only available, I think, to people who insure through Tesla. And that's going to be the demarcation line. Because if I'm Tesla, I want to control where the car goes. So they're going to know the movement patterns of people in optimal ODDs. And they're probably going to pre-select people whose movement patterns suggest they're not going to take the car on a road trip to Alaska. And so they'll probably pepper driverless capability throughout the community based on their own data of the risk the vehicle is likely to take with that owner. So myself, David Moss, the other Cannonball Tesla guy, the people who are most likely to just send the car to New York, we're not going to be getting it first. But the people, okay, and I mean, because that's obviously, but unless there's some behind the scenes deal, but the people who are just going, daytime, safe hours, low traffic, simple ODD and low risk, and Tesla knows, they will undoubtedly be among the first people to get driverless capability, and they're going to be pre-selected because I think they insure through Tesla, and I think that's all going to happen within 24 months.
I think Q1 in Austin.
Could be. I think it's great. Well, to be clear, Tesla's own robotaxi fleet much sooner, much sooner.
That's already happened,
obviously. Right? Yeah. Because they can control the availability and the routes. For private ownership or privately owned Teslas, I stand by my timeline. For Tesla fleet, you are correct.
Incredible. All right, we are coming up on time here. Alex, where can we learn more about you? Where can we find you? What do you want to share with us before we wrap today?
I'm easily found on all platforms as AlexRoy144. And I get hate mail in all of them, but also some fan mail. And then my podcast is the Autonocast, AUTONOCAST. Just Google Alex Roy Autonocast, you'll find me. Yeah. Often, mostly right, occasionally wrong, hate mail accepted. It's good.
Cool, man. Well, we hope to have you back on as a regular, if that's okay, as things progress.
Yeah,
anytime. Notable events occur. We really appreciate you, though, man. Thanks for coming on.
Love what you're doing. I support you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. That's the pod, y'all.